everyone. Thank you all for joining us for tonight's Planning Commission meeting. As always, we'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Commissioner Keldorf to lead us all in the pledge. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Chair Baldino,
Present?
Vice Chair Newman,
Present.
Commissioner Keldorf,
here.
Commissioner Heschler is absent, and Commissioner Magai is absent.
Thank you, Venus. All right, now on the agenda is time for public communications. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Planning Commission on anything not already on the agenda. Okay, seeing no one rush to the podium, we'll go ahead and close public communication. Next, written communications. Is everything that we have on the dais the additional written communications that we weren't already provided in our packets?
Yes, that's correct. We had distributed 2 memos with updated conditions of approval and resolutions for each of the 2 items, along with an email that spawned some of those corrections, and then a table that has some information on vacancy rates within the city for commercial office at the request of a commissioner, and we're distributing that to all of the commission as well as having that available for the public.
All right, thank you, Eduardo. Next is our consent calendar. We have meeting minutes spanning back to 2019. I trust everyone had time to read those. Any modifications or changes to any of those meeting minutes? No, if not, I'll go ahead and take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Passed. All right, that brings us to our first public hearing. This is continued business, agenda item J2, environmental assessment number EA 1292 and Tier 1 Community Benefit Plan number CBP 2001 in the Smoky House Specific Plan. And we're talking about the address at 141 Eucalyptus Drive in El Segundo. And before we have our staff report, I'd like to disclose that my office is located at 109 Standard, which is maybe 4 blocks away. All right, and with that, we'll have a staff report, please.
And one more thing I would like to disclose too, that the applicant reached out to me and I agreed to have a Zoom meeting with them yesterday.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Commission. Yeah. Hi, good evening. My name is Brad Meisner, and I'm contract planner that's been hired to help represent the city in the review of this project. As you indicated before, this is a project located at 141 Eucalyptus Drive. It involves a mixed-use project, and before you this evening is the review of a community benefits plan. The first slide I'd like to show you is just the location of the proposed project within the Smoky Hollow Specific Plan. It is located in the Smoky Hollow Specific Plan West Zoning District. The map you can see here before you indicates the red shaded area to the left of the slide. That's the Smoky Hollow West Zoning District. We'll talk about the site in a bit more detail in a moment. And then you can see the red box, which was the recently approved sub area that was recently amended for the project. Now that's not having anything to do with the site. I just wanted to point that out. As far as the site is concerned, it's located on the west side of Eucalyptus Drive between Franklin Avenue and El Segundo Boulevard. On the left slide here, you can see the subject property within the context of the block. To the right is just some blown up image that shows that is the second parcel in from south of Franklin Avenue. There are 3 structures on the property. They would all be raised in favor of the new construction. In terms of the proposed project, as I've indicated, it's in the Smoky Hollow West Zoning District. It would be a 4-story, 35-foot high building, 8,882 square feet mixed use. It would be situated on a parcel that's a little over 6,200 square feet. Really would be an infill project within the context of that block. The parcel itself is approximately 45 by 139 feet. What is before you this evening is a community benefits request, Tier 1 community benefits request as set forth in the Smoky House Specific Plan. Specifically, they're requesting a floor area ratio to go above and beyond the baseline of 0.75. What is requested is a 1.41 floor area ratio, and that is because of the size of the building in comparison to the lot size itself. The community benefits plan in accordance with the Smoky House specific plan at Tier 1 only requires approval from the Planning Commission. Along with this building, which is solely primarily set up for an office user over 2 floors, there would be a very small takeout only restaurant, as well as some outdoor public seating. I'll take a moment just to pause. You do have a supplemental memo before you that indicates that there was some concern about what is the intent of the takeout restaurant. I do want to clarify that it is takeout only. There would be no tables and chairs within the inside of the space. Staff has added a condition to ensure that if that ever were to be converted, it would need the approval of a conditional use permit. And then also, with looking at the updated plans, that square footage of that space is 703 square feet. So I just wanted to make a point about that.
Can you tell us if these type of takeout restaurants are allowed in the Smoky Hollow plan?
They are permissible by right, and then any kind of sit-down restaurant would require a conditional use permit.
And again, the only thing before us is the community benefit program of the FAR increase.
That is correct, yes. In terms of the actual building itself, as you can see here from the rendering, it is consistent with the Smoky House specific plan. In particular, the architecture has the large window openings. It has 360-degree architecture. It's been designed in an environmentally sensitive way to allow for light to come into the building. There's a fair amount of transparency, as you can see on the upper levels. At the ground level, there is a easily identifiable pedestrian entrance. We have an outdoor gathering area for the public to sit. Someone could go actually grab one of the products to sit down, or you could just be a member of the public that's looking for a respite as you're walking around the town if you wanted to sit there. So that's fully publicly accessible. As part of the conversations around the design, the applicant was asked to include 2 new public street trees, which are shown here in the rendering. In terms of the other elevations of the building, as you can see, there's a lot of change in the planes. There's a lot of step back and setback, a difference in materials, and I think all in all, it's well designed, including some of the larger horizontal overhangs. In terms of the layout, it's a 4-story building. It's 35 feet as measured from the average grade plane. There's about a 10-foot grade differential from the back of the property down to the front. So what you'll have from the street level is really the appearance of a 4-story building. From the alley, it would really have the appearance of a 3-story building. It is from the alley where the parking is accessed, in fact. In terms of the Smoky House specific plan, the community benefits plan, again, as I stated, they're requesting a 1.41 FAR above the base of 0.35. All projects are expected to be compliant with the 32 design guidelines that are part of the plan. For those 32 design guidelines, they are in the areas of building character, open space and landscaping, connectivity, signage, and public art and public realm. By providing at least 17 of those 32 criteria, that's considered to be an exemplary project. This project incorporates 22 of those 32 design guidelines. Specifically, enhanced building architecture really is the predominant feature that they're using, but it does also have the public gathering, as I discussed earlier. It does have landscaping and environmental design in terms of the lighting that would be allowed in the building through the transparency. There does have connectivity and also public realm. One other community benefit that was part of this was a monetary contribution of $5,000 for public infrastructure as well. So with that, the findings that would be needed to support this project, there are 3 of them for the Planning Commission to consider, and they involve the proposed, well, they're here on the screen, I won't read them all. Staff does believe that the project merits approval and that these findings can be made. Those findings are before you within the resolution for your consideration. And with that, the staff's recommendation is to adopt Resolution 2923 to approve EA 1292 and the Community Benefits Plan for the proposed project. With that, I'll answer any questions that you have, and I know that the applicant is here to address the commission as well.
Thank you. Any questions?
One, I got, with the parking is, because it's a takeout only restaurant, is there any like 20-minute spots or everything is treated the same in terms of the?
Right, so for new construction within the Smoky House specific plan, everything is calculated at a one for every 250, or sorry, 2.5 spaces for every 1,000 square feet. For this particular project, it would be, would require 22 parking spaces, 13 are on site. There's also the option for them to pay an in lieu fee for the shortage, which they will be doing to the tune of about $261,000. So there are no dedicated spaces for the takeout restaurant.
Thank you.
And does the city know the type of tenant the takeout restaurant will be yet, or is it still just a concept?
I think it's conceptual. You're certainly welcome to ask the applicant, but my understanding is it really is just a sort of a grab and go type of takeout restaurant.
I'm curious if we've had any update lately about the in lieu fee and how well that program is working.
We would probably have to agendize that for later to get a recap on the Smoky Hollow parking and lieu fee, or we could actually probably talk about the downtown one as well. I mean, those are the only in lieu fees I'm aware of with parking, right?
Well, I guess, I mean, it's important to note that we have been collecting fees, in lieu fees. That money goes into an account that's specifically dedicated for improvements along, along the street systems and public rights of ways within Smoky Hollow. In terms of what's been expended, I mean, we can, I don't know, I think Paul may have a little bit more information on that. If you wanted to go into some of those details, we can kind of give you an overview, but you're most welcome to agendize it officially if you'd like to get like into the weeds of things. But we can, I mean, I think we were able to give you kind of a general high level explanation above what, in addition to what I just said.
Yeah, more than just the financial benefits to the city and what they're actually doing with the money. It's how is that money being spent to really solve or how are we really adding spaces? How are we really solving a parking problem over there? Anywhere really throughout the downtown. I'm just, I know that it's to help applicants provide the parking that's needed if they can't actually do it on site based on what their build out is. So I realize the meaning behind it.
Right, yeah.
And I think before we dive too deep into this particular topic, I don't want to detract from the item that's agendized. I think you raise a good point, and we have two processes. One is underway, which is the downtown specific plan update, which we can have that conversation during that process as it relates to downtown parking. And the Smoky Hollow specific plan update will kick off in the next few months, and we can have that conversation through that process as well. But the in lieu fee is currently a mechanism that's being utilized, and it wouldn't be the appropriate time now to dissect whether or not we're okay
No worries,
with that.
sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any questions for staff? All right, thank you very much. Now we'll have public communication. As always, the first right will go to the applicant. Just tell us your name.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Brandon Strauss from Soror & Associates here on behalf of the applicant, Lisa Collinson and 141 Eucalyptus LLC. Thank you for considering our project tonight. We also would like to thank the staff for guiding us through the community benefits plan process for the project. So tonight we are asking for approval for a new commercial building in the Smoky Hollow West Zoning District at 141 Eucalyptus Drive, and in particular this Tier 1 Community Benefit Plan. The applicant, Lisa Collinson, is a partner in the law firm of Collinson, Danke, Inlow, and Greco, which is currently has its local office in Torrance. The firm is a women-owned small business with additional offices in San Francisco and Las Vegas. Ms. Collinson plans to relocate the Torrance office to the proposed new building on Eucalyptus Drive. As Mr. Meisner said, the new building will be primarily office space with a small to-go food service on the ground floor. I don't want to repeat on any of the details which Mr. Meisner, fully discussed, but I just want to say that in addition, the staff report makes clear that the proposed design and uses for the new building will meet the majority of the Smoky Hollow design guidelines and will provide amenities for neighboring businesses and their occupants. Louis Tamaro, a prominent local architect, worked closely with the staff to soften the massing of the building through stepped back design and expansive glass and integrated landscaping, which you saw. The design also takes into account the building's relationship with neighboring structures. It's pedestrian oriented. It has outdoor seating for everyone to use. People from nearby businesses can walk over and buy lunch or bring their own lunch and take advantage of the outdoor seating. In sum, it implements the specific plan guidelines, and it provides a place for communal gathering, which is the point of the community benefits plan. So it truly is an exemplary project within the meaning of the specific plan, and we ask for your approval of the proposed resolution. And I can answer any questions you may have.
So does the applicant know what the takeout service will be yet?
She does not.
Okay, but is it her plan to take over the rest of the office building with her law firm?
Yes, it's a single tenant or single occupant building.
Okay.
That was my question.
Oh. Any other questions for the applicant, Brenda? All right, well, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.
All right, public communication is open. Anyone else wishing to make comments, please do so now. Just go ahead and step up and tell us your name.
Hello, my name is Peter Romano. I'm a business owner and property owner on Eucalyptus Drive, right near where this property is being built. We all know throughout El Segundo and certainly in Smoky Hollow, parking has always been a major issue.
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. Do you mind speaking into the mic?
I would advise people to come and look at this street at 8:30 in the morning. During the weekdays, there's no parking. So what I'm seeing here is the city is approving a building that has more square footage than parking can be supported. And I went through this street 2 days ago, and I measured off everything. Right now, with parallel parking, you have 28 spaces. That's it. You might be able to jam one more, and if we had lines delineating the parking, that might be a little bit better. But right now, it's the Wild West. So what I see right now is 30% of the parking on this street is going to in-lieu parking, and I think it's very unfair to all of the other business owners and vendors that come to these places. The city is selling our streets for 29 grand a pop. So does that mean, as a business owner, I can buy some street parking? I don't quite understand how you could violate what's going on in that part of the city and most of the other parts of the city and just sell away parking places because somebody wants to build a bigger building that is normally allowed in one lot. So if somebody can tell me why this is right, I'd love to hear it. This $200 and something thousand, it's a drop in the bucket. You're selling the parking, and we don't know if it's going to be 24/7. We don't know if it's going to be 8 to 4, 8 to 5. So these are all locked up parking places that nobody can use, and there's not already enough. So I rest my case, but I think you really have to consider the parking and the other people who are there, because every other building that's going to be built is going to try to get street parking in lieu, and then there's going to be no parking. So I rest my case. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. When we're done with public comments, I'll respond, okay? Hi.
Hi, Planning Commission. My name is Zan Sachs. I am a lifelong resident here in the South Bay, graduate of local South Bay schools, and I'm fortunate to be one of the partners and founders of a commercial real estate firm called Beta, which is currently headquartered in El Segundo. We're very proud to be here. I am going to start out with some irony. Our business is primarily focused on retail leasing. We've done that with my partners and I for a collective 100 years. Richard Rizica is one of my partners. You may have seen his signs around town. We've done a lot of projects. We're very proud of the retail community that's been hit very hard over a number of years and right now needs all the support that it can get to be successful. So me coming out in opposition to a certain aspect of this project, being someone that's passionate about retail, that sees the value of it, the importance for community, I think says a lot about the authenticity of my concern for what this project may mean. What I do want to clarify also up front is that I'm not opposed to the project itself. I actually think it looks beautiful. I'm okay with the bonus density. I, in fact, wholeheartedly support the project and should mention that our building is the building immediately adjacent to the south of this subject site. So we're intimately familiar with the street and obviously this project. So again, to be clear, it's a beautiful project, totally support it. The only thing we are adamantly opposed to is this food service that's at the ground level. And I'm going to share with you a few reasonable reasons that I think that the Planning Commission should consider. One thing I just wanted to mention, a couple of formal things, is that when we first moved onto the block, because we bought our building earlier this year, we sent a letter to this property owner at the time, letting them know who we were, gave him our phone number, wanted to show that we were a valued member of the community and just have that relationship. We never heard anything back. When we come to receive a notice on July 20th in the mail that there was going to be a hearing on July 28th, 8 days after we get the letter, not ever hearing from this owner that they had any plans, I think just speaks to the fact that, with all due respect, it's not good business, it's not community practice. There was no one that ever knocked on our door. There was no one that ever made any effort to have any conversation until we proactively reached out asking questions. And I think that it's unfair for the Planning Commission to approve something that may have reasonable objections and concerns with an 8-day notice, given a lot of people travel during the summer. There may have been neighbors on the street that aren't even aware of this. I've talked to a few that couldn't make it tonight, but asked them to relay that they were in support of my message here. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. We do know that it was moved from the 28th to today, but obviously it's still a short amount of time. So we have reached out to the mayor. I understand that the mayor has forwarded our email, we know Drew, to other members of the council expressing our concern. We had also spoken to the entitlement consultant, I think as recently as 2 days ago, and he was providing some information. Thank you. But having 48 hours to digest that and come here with a message seems like you're kind of forcing something down the throats of the community, and I just don't think that's right. A few other things to kind of mention that are more specific to the real concern here. This whole idea of, oh, well, it doesn't have indoor seating, it's just to go, that's less impactful. I mean, just put on your consumer hat for a second and let's think about how people park at restaurants. And again, this is an area where I can speak as a matter of, my profession. With Uber Eats, a lot of these other to-go delivery type services, they're really now making up 30 to 50% of most businesses' revenue for food. So what you're going to have is you already impacted parking on the street, right? And now you have people that are pulling up really quick to get out of their cars. They're parking illegally. They're parking in our spots or other people's spots because they just want to get in and out. I see it all the time at shopping centers across Southern California. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have not only the parking impact, but you're going to have a safety impact because you're going to have people constantly jaywalking to get back and forth. I mean, if it's a coffee operator, they're going to have on non-peak times, probably 10 to 15 different customers that are going to come out, and that's non-peak. And by the way, peak times are when people are mostly driving to work, parking, getting out, so it's a serious safety concern that I think you have to consider. The other piece of this that I want to point out is the parking, which I'm not even going to get into the fact that they're not even parked remotely to code or remotely to what's reasonable, is in the back. And if any of you have been to that alley, it is completely unrealistic that anyone is going to park in the alley, walk down the street to Franklin, walk down the other side, or walk through the project. They're going to park on Eucalyptus. That's where they're going to park. And there is no parking on Eucalyptus that's for this project. They don't have any stalls in front of it that they've planned for. At least that would be kind of solving the problem. So I did want to point that out. Just a couple last things here, and hopefully my impassioned speech isn't to take away from, the seriousness. And I actually want to say El Segundo has become one of the most beautiful cities to come, to shop at, to spend time at. And my worry is that making a little decision like this that starts to set precedent for all the other things that could come. I'm looking 10 to 15 years down the road. If you have all these little retail spaces, I think one of the comments, by the way, not to get totally out of whack here, but when we were emailing with the consultant, he said, well, it's not going to take away from the vibrancy of Main Street or Grand where you already have restaurants. Maybe one 700 square foot shop doesn't. But what happens when it's 5, 10, 15? You're taking away the life from the other businesses in the places where they should be thriving. You want people to be on Main Street. It's called Main Street for a reason. The other thing that I would point out is this notion that it's a community benefit because it's nice to have it nearby. For me to go from my office to Grand, to the Starbucks there, or to like the Ensenadas Grill or the other restaurants, it's a 30-second walk, 30 seconds. To go from my building to Main Street, to the breweries, to Rock and Brews, to any of those places, 35 seconds. This is not an inconvenience. If this was on Lomita, Center, Maryland, I can actually see the benefit because you really have to drive from those streets. I think that there's something respectfully that's wrong about the notion that the specific plan covers all those streets, because when you're on Standard and when you're on, in my opinion, Eucalyptus, you're right there to where you want people to go. So I think that's something to consider. And if you have, I was a little confused because there was a comment made about this not being a discretionary component where it's allowed. But what I would implore you is that if it's discretionary in the context of the bonus density that you're giving, our ask is that you give them the bonus density subject to, because again, that's discretionary, subject to removing this as being part of the project if you're allowed to do that. And if not, I can tell you that we are adamantly not in support of this, and we'll probably continue to express our non-support. I guess in closing here, I'm just seeing if there was anything else important. Unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, so I think I talked about safety, I talked about parking. I mentioned that really the parking that's there isn't sufficient in terms of where it's located, but also the fact, I agree with the other gentleman that spoke, it's an absolute crime to assume that you can be parked at 13 spaces when the code says 22, when the code respectfully for food service, most tenants for food, you want to be parked at 5 to 10 per thousand. This is what I do for a living, I'm certain of it. And you're parked at 13 stalls for this 4-story building. So again, all that I wanted to say is I don't believe this is a community benefit. If you have discretion, I would strongly urge you to just oppose that one part of it. The rest of the project, 12 out of 10. Totally support it. So thank you very much, and you've done a fantastic job with this city. It's truly an incredible place to work, and I just hope that you don't start the stepping stones of it going the other direction, because as the gentleman said before, if you have the parking that's eliminated on the street for short-term gain of that 200,000 or whatever it is, you start getting to a breaking point where people are like, my wife used to work in Smoky Hollow, and she'd drive around for floor blocks to find parking, and this was pre-COVID. Remember, we haven't gotten everyone back to work. What's going to happen in 2 years when it's more commonplace to come back to work? How is it going to be on the street? And these are the little things, trust me, will make a huge difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zaks. Any other member of the public wishing to make public comment? This is your time to do so. All right. Seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and close public communication. And before our general comments, let me just respond to some of the things that were said. Mr. Romano, I understand your concern about the difficulty of parking, but when we talk about the parking in lieu program, they're not buying an actual physical spot on the street. They're not taking anything away from what's already there. They are paying money to the city so that instead of, parallel parking, the idea that we have is we can do one-way streets in Smoky Hollow and put angled parking. And the money they're paying for is going to help us restripe the streets, redo directional arrows. So it's called a parking in lieu program because they don't have on site the number of parking spaces they need, and so they pay the city for the parking that they're missing. And it's the city's burden then to use those funds to help alleviate parking for the entire Smoky Hollow area. We've done this downtown. It's been a mainstay of the downtown program. So if you want to add more square footage in downtown, you could buy into the parking in lieu program, and then the city would then add more parking. So there is nothing that we're approving here today that is going to take public parking off of the street and reserve it for this office building. Those extra cars that will need to park at this office building will have to drive around like everyone else in Smoky Hollow and try to find a spot on the street. Now, with respect to the public benefit, the last time we redid the Smoky Hollow plan, the overarching goal that this dais put forth and was approved by City Council was that we're going to transform this heavy light industrial area into mixed-use office. We're going to try to revitalize some of these streets and make them walkable. So the plans that we have on paper do not look like what Smoky Hollow looks like today. It's a long process. But what we did to encourage the redevelopment and revitalization of Smoky Hollow was to create a standardized checklist of things we want to see. On that checklist, tell me if I'm wrong, one of the benefits that we wanted was small takeout dining, right? And that's why I asked early on that this is a right that is written in our code for any property developer within Smoky Hollow. If you add public seating, if you add trees, if you add bicycle parking spaces, all things we want to see more of in our town, if a private developer does that, that gives them a credit for which they can increase their FAR. So I understand your questions and your concerns, and they are well taken. But the applicant has complied with what we have laid out as a planning commission, as a city, for how we want to redesign and redevelop Smoky Hollow. So the fault that you have with if you don't want takeout, if you think it's dangerous, or you don't like parking in lieu, the fault lies with us. And that is the plan we've kind of set forth, because we wanted to set forth parameters and procedures of, we know that this part of town is going to get redeveloped, so how do we do it, and how do we do it in a way that it makes sense so we can still have money to redo the streets, to have more parking, and more importantly, how can we do it so it brings an aesthetic appeal. And so when we review this, and what we're tasked with here is, does the community benefit provide enough benefit for the extension of the FAR? And I believe we were told that if you get 17 out of 32, that is a top score, and this applicant has 22 out of 32. So they have followed the rules that we have set forth. They have designed a project, which in my opinion is beautiful and is better than what's there now. Are there negative consequences? Yes. But those consequences we have tried to deal with by rewriting our Smoky Hollow plan, and I believe we're in the process of doing this one more time, correct, Mr. Allen?
That's correct.
And what is the time frame of us once again looking at the Smoky Hollow plan and deciding what works, what doesn't work, what do we need to change?
We'll start the process in the next 2 to 3 months, and it'll be about a 2 to 3 month process.
Okay.
So within the next 6 months, it should be done.
So that's when we're going to need those folks who work in Smoky Hollow, especially those with commercial development skills, to come give your input and tell us what you want to have happen down there. And then we can craft a long-term plan to try to put that in motion. But once again, I want to thank you both for coming. I hear what you're saying about parking. I know parking down there is a problem. It's been a problem for a while. Parking downtown has been a problem for a while. But this applicant and what we have before us has pretty much done what we have asked them to do to bring this project to life. So I hope I've answered those questions as best as I could. Now, that having been said, are there any comments from the dais that you want to make about the project in general?
Can we ask staff to at least just address the discretionary approval piece of that, just so we're all clear on what it is that we're approving? I know you mentioned it in the beginning.
Sure, we can close the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I did already. So we'll officially close the public hearing. Thank you. So yeah, someone explained to us, I guess the question is what is within our purview as far as what we're deciding, and what is not discretionary as far as what the applicant is allowed to do by right because it complies with our Smoky Hollow plan.
Right. So what's before the commission in the discretionary form is the community benefits plan. So in this case, what's being requested is a 1.41 FAR. That's above and beyond the baseline of 0.75. The takeout restaurant in and of itself is a permissible land use by right, as is the parking. The parking that is set up is allowed to be either provided on-site, to be provided off-site with a covenant, or pay the parking in lieu fee. So those two components of the project are by right. However, the discretion lies in the floor area ratio request.
Right, but our discretion is whether or not this project satisfies enough criteria of what we set forth in order to be granted the variance it's requesting.
To grant the overage of FAR, correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did that answer the question?
It does, yep, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of comments, I think that for me is that, we're asked to kind of decouple this project and what the Smoky Hollow specific plan allows by right and what is in our realm to be able to approve. And then additionally have this other conversation that I think is very important about parking in lieu and the specific plan update. Because based on the projects that we've seen and the questions that have come up, I think there are going to be tweaks and the community needs to weigh in on, certainly. But for this project, I think, it's an
And
exceptional
to piggyback-
design and it's met the requirements.
To piggyback on that, I think one of the discussions moving forward could potentially be not parallel parking, but angled parking, I think. And that will increase parking over in that area, which is a good thing, and that's just a side note. Comments I had, of course, and it has nothing to do with the restaurant, because that's not what we're really talking about, but it's very walkable from downtown. So I don't think that traffic or an issue of cars pulling up or Ubers pulling up, and I hope that's not the case. I think that this is going to serve the immediate neighboring area, or anybody from the surrounding area that wishes to walk over there to get a takeout. It would be my feeling. Yeah, I'm sure the applicant had stack parking is a big deal. The motorized, what do you call that?
The lifts?
Lifts, yeah. I'm sure that they did consider that, and I don't know if it's maybe less expensive or it just made more sense for in lieu parking, but a quick question, if they did consider that in the design of the building? If we know, don't know? Okay. Not that I'm asking for design change in the building, because it's extremely beautiful, and that's not my position, but I was just curious on a side note for that.
If I may, Commissioner Newman, I just wanted to mention that height may be an issue there. What precluded them from using vehicle lifts, because the building is right at the height limit right now.
Right.
And putting in vehicle lifts would have required them to kind of,
It would have
raise
taken
the
one
building.
floor of office space away, yeah.
Yes.
Right, I understand
So
that.
that would have complicated the design and
Right.
couldn't come up to a tier 2 community development plan.
Is there another building in the area that has been approved with so many community benefits that we could compare to? That's come before the commission? I don't recall.
The mayor's building had community benefits,
Yeah?
right?
True.
Talez's buildings, his projects.
Yeah, Standard Works also.
Standard Works had a lot of community
Recently
benefits in it,
Correct.
but, also in
But
that.
I mean, with exceeding,
immediate area.
exactly. The immediate
Oh,
area,
on
exceeding.
Eucalyptus?
Yeah.
I can't think of a project on Eucalyptus that we've done in the last 10 years. But if you recall, Franklin was supposed to be the street that was going to be this energized, walkable street where we wanted outdoor seating and bike racks and cafes and things like that. So, I hear the concerns of the neighbors, but this complies with what we have set forth in our plan. And with respect to the parking, I am happy that we're not looking at another project in Smoky Hollow with triple tandem parking.
Right.
These are single parking spaces. It's a workable plan. And the applicant's within their rights to pay in the parking in lieu, and that shifts the burden to the city to go out there and solve the problems. So ultimately, it's going to be the city's responsibility to make this project work.
If I could jump in, Commissioner Newman, you referenced a Zoom meeting you had, I think, with the developer, the applicant.
Not this one,
Not this, for the next
next
item.
project,
Okay,
yeah.
I will save this for then.
certainly.
What's Joaquin gonna say? Ooh. Cliffhanger. All right, any further discussions? I'll just generally say that the project is exemplary in its design. This is an example of kind of what we want the future of Smoky Hollow to be, as far as redeveloping these industrial spaces into creative office and whatever. And you know, to the extent that there are issues with parking and walkability, and if those who own and work in Smoky Hollow don't want to see the city go in this direction, then by all means let us know, and we can adjust this Smoky Hollow plan, which we plan on doing anyway. So, but as far as this application is concerned, I think it's well within the parameters that we set forth and deserves to be approved. No, unless there's any other comments, I'll accept the motion.
You can go.
I can go if you tell me what it is. Will move to approve the project before us. Anybody have the number?
Here you go. I think it's this guy right here.
Environmental assessment number EA 1292 and Tier 1 Community Benefits Plan CBP 2001.
I'll second.
All right, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
3-0, project passes. Thank you, everyone. All right, next on our agenda is agenda item H3. This is a new public hearing. Environmental assessment number EA 1291, including a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Site plan review number SPR 2003, off-site parking covenant number MISC 2001, administrative use permit number AUP 2003 for construction of a 39,559 square foot, 4-story office building and 4-level parking structure at 1950 to 1960 East Grand Avenue. And can we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is David Blumenthal. I'm a consultant, planning consultant for the city of El Segundo. Just give us one moment to get the PowerPoint up.
You said Bornenthal, sir?
Yeah, while we do that, this is David Blumenthal. He's another contract planner.
Okay.
I've known David for a couple decades already. So he's done a couple projects here in town in the past. He's been before the commission, and so I'll be giving the presentation on this project.
Thank you, Eduardo.
I do believe my last time before you was about a year ago, and it was via Zoom, so this is my first time doing before you
Nice to
live,
see you in
so,
person.
Yes. All right, so as you noted, the proposed project before you tonight is we're looking at a site plan review, mitigated negative declaration, off-site parking agreement, and an administrative use permit for the construction of the new building. The site itself is it's located on the east side of Grand Avenue, south side of Grand Avenue, east of Pacific Coast Highway. It's currently zoned corporate office. The site is about 5.37 acres, and it is divided into 2 equal size and shaped parcels. Currently, the site is improved with an 11 level 819 space parking structure that's on parcel 1, and a 233,000 net square foot 12-story office building on parcel 2. So you see the proposed site plan there before you right now. The applicant is proposing on parcel 1 to construct a new 5-level commercial office building. This is actually 4 stories plus a mezzanine level. And then on parcel 2, a new 4-level 258 parking structure. Additionally, there will be a courtyard within the center between the 2 office buildings, and surface parking between the 2 parking structures. Wanted to kind of go over the proposed building right now. Now, the building, as I noted, is 5 levels. It is a little over 96 feet tall. It is 93,559 square feet net floor area. It's a little over 105 gross floor area. 105,000 gross floor area. The building itself will primarily be office uses, with the exception of the ground level. There is a small gym and a small cafe within the building, the first floor of that building. Outdoor areas for each tenant are provided, and additionally, there will be a rooftop terrace provided on the building for the upper floor tenants to utilize. These outdoor areas are only accessible from within the tenant spaces, so they're not going to be open to the public, just to the tenants of the office building. The proposed parking structure is about 58 feet tall. It does have 258 parking spaces in it. It is 4 floors. There are sufficient handicap accessible parking, clean air vehicles, and EV charging spaces to meet the city's and state requirements. Additionally, there'll be motorcycle parking, which is in excess to the parking being provided for vehicles. And as I noted, there is a central plaza between the two buildings. This plaza provides new trellises, fire features, and seating areas for the enjoyment of the tenants to utilize during the day. Now, the proposed project does comply with all development standards for the CO zone. One thing that the applicant is requesting is for an off-site parking agreement. And the parcel 1, which is 1950 grand, has an excess surplus of parking. Parcel 2, which is 1960 grand, this is the parcel that has the existing office building. Upon completion, as a standalone parcel, will be short 353 parking spaces. So the off-site parking agreement is going to be between the two properties on the site. So 353 spaces from the parcel 1 will be used to satisfy the parking requirements. Overall, when all is said and done, we still have a surplus of 215 parking spaces between the two of them, so there'll be no shortage of actual parking. Now, in addition to the proposed development, the applicant has proposed master sign program. And as part of the master sign program, they are requesting to install 2 new monument signs. These signs are 16 feet tall. They'll be located 1 on each parcel between the buildings and the street. The director has approved an administrative use permit per the El Segundo Municipal Code that does allow the director to approve taller than 8-foot tall signs up to 20 feet. He has made all those findings, and that has been submitted with the packet before you to receive and file. Now, the commission does have the option per the code to, instead of receive and file, to consider these signs as part of the package as well, too. The environmental, the city did contract with a firm to prepare a mitigated negative declaration for the environmental. All the environmental factors typically reviewed have been reviewed for this. We did find that there could be potential impacts to cultural resources, geology and soils, transportation, and tribal cultural resources. These impacts are fully mitigatable, so the mitigation measures have been included and will reduce these impacts to a level below significance. Now, the environmental MND did go out for public comment period for 20 days. During that comment period, the city received 2 comments on the environmental itself. One was from the Los Angeles County sanitation districts. The sanitation districts basically provided some additional data on anticipated waste flow from the sites, and the MND has been updated accordingly to meet their numbers that they anticipate for the site. The second letter was received from the law firm that's representing Safer. That letter was generally saying that the document is flawed, and there was a fair argument to say that the full EIR could be or should be required. However, they provided no evidence or any supporting data to those statements. So from a staff perspective, we've kind of noted their objections and have included that in the response to comments. Now, after the environmental notice went out, the city did publish public notice for tonight's hearing. The city did receive 1 comment letter in response to that. The comment letter was from a gentleman whose wife is a tenant of the building right now, and he's expressed concern about elimination of the surface parking lot. Particularly, her clients tend to be a little bit older. So they requested during construction that proper signage, proper lighted pathways, security be provided to get their customers from the parking to the office building. Since that time, condition number 17 has been added to your resolution. I believe that was distributed after the initial distribution of the packet. And we do have some modifications, additional modifications to that for you tonight as well too. So there was a memorandum given to you this evening with some outlining some additional changes and new resolutions were provided for you. The first one's going to be to proposed Reso 2924, and this is adopting the mitigation monitoring program. One of the issues was the mitigation measure for transportation. We just wanted to clarify that the transportation measures only apply to new uses in the new office building, since the existing uses, we're not applying the environmental to the existing uses. They're already there. Second note on that is after the environmental was given through for the public comment, we did change that mitigation measure for the tribal resources. And that mitigation measure just struck the reference to the specific tribe that had consulted with us for that, and but still retains all of its other aspects to it. The second update tonight is to Reso 2925. This is for the remainder of the project. It's a little bit difficult to read up there, but condition number 10, and specifically 10 subsection A of that, we are striking that. That was a reference to an older project that was a Scrivener error that should not have been included. So we do not need that. And then, as I noted before, condition number 17, which was included as the revisions, we're further revising it to note that the applicant shall provide security escorts at the request of clients or as a request of customers and tenants. They do need to post a number that could be called, and they can provide the security escort during construction to get people to and from the building. We have spoke to the applicant about these. They are in agreement with these changes already for the conditions on that. With that, we do believe all the findings can be made in a positive manner for this project. That will conclude my report. We also have tonight here is our consultant that prepared the environmental document, if you have questions on that, as well as the applicant is here for to respond to any questions as well too. And that will conclude my report. I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Oh, thank you very much. Any questions for staff at this time?
I do have a question that's not necessarily project specific, because again, we're complying with zoning and the project itself, but just out of curiosity, do we know what occupancy, maybe the applicant knows this, occupancy vacancy for commercial office in El Segundo is, and even break down east of PCH or west of PCH? And if not,
You're asking for current vacancy rates? I don't know if we have that information off the top of our head.
Yeah, I think some of,
Maybe.
22%.
Is that on our sheet?
Oh, maybe we do.
yeah, it was part of the packet of information, so it's about
22.6%.
22.5%.
No, they do El Segundo. 24 South Bay, 22 El Segundo.
there it is. I guess my question would be for the applicant.
Okay. No questions for staff, Brenda? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll open public communication, and the first right will go to the applicant. We do have questions for the applicants. Whoever wants to step forward. Hi.
Hello, Chair. How are you?
Good. Can I get your name?
Spencer Kallick with Alan Mackins on behalf of the applicant.
Nice to see you, Spencer.
Good to see you as well. We do have a presentation as well if you'd like.
Oh, let's get in.
Or
Is that
happy
okay if we do the
to answer
presentation?
questions if you'd like.
Okay, let's do the presentation, then
Okay.
we'll get into our questions.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good, thank you. Again, Spencer Kallick, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. First of all, I want to thank staff profusely, particularly Paul Samaras and Dave Blumenthal for helping us through this process. I don't have to tell you guys, but I'll say it again, your staff is phenomenal, and it's a joy to work with the city of El Segundo. You already know where the project is here. A lot of this is going to be duplicative. I apologize. I'll try and move forward quickly to be respectful of your time. But again, here at 1950, 1960 Grand. Project existing conditions, you can see here, really the focus of this project is to fully and efficiently use the existing property, which candidly is not that well utilized at the moment. As you can see, got your existing office building here, takes up about less than half of the footprint of the property, and there's a large majority of the property that's inefficiently used as surface parking, which really doesn't take advantage of the full potential of the site. Proposed project you heard about, converting that underutilized asphalt parking lot into a well-designed office building and additional parking structure. In addition, we're trying to revitalize the existing open space through the creation of expansive central courtyard that you'll see. We see lots of benefits to that, mainly efficiently utilizing the property, activating the Grand Avenue streetscape through the use of a visually pleasing design and open, inviting flow towards the central courtyard. You saw this diagram before. I'll move past this. You saw some pretty pictures as well. I can't take credit for these. You can thank our architect, Sergio, from Where Malcolm, who's here. But it's really, the idea here is a 4-story office building that I'll say is really meant to be kind of the prototype of what, I don't know whether we're in COVID or post-COVID, whatever you want to call it, but in a post-COVID environment that is a beautiful office space for people to use, but also has outdoor space, both in the central courtyard, but also in the rooftop terrace, where people can meet, gather, and frankly meet outside in a safer environment. The new parking structure, you heard Mr. Blumenthal speak about this earlier. It's a little confusing how the math all works, but basically since we're getting rid of surface parking, adding it back, we're not off-site parking somewhere down the street. It's all generally on the property. It's just that we have to, since it's across 2 parcels, we have to have an agreement that binds them together. I did talk about this landscape, central courtyard. We're very excited about this. It's about 136,000 square feet of open space, which is phenomenal for an office building. I wish my office building had that much open space. But this is going to be a fantastic place for people to join, get together, have a cup of coffee in the courtyard, and commune with their fellow staff. We spoke about the requested approval, site plan review, the parking covenant, administrative use permit, and the MND. As was referenced earlier, we are in support of all the conditions the staff has put forth. We have been in touch with the one tenant who made a comment as well, and are absolutely in support of keeping our tenants safe. Right? Artisan runs the existing building now. We want to make sure that even during construction, we know it can be inconvenient at times. We want to make sure that everyone in our building feels safe. There's already 24/7 security there, and our tenants know that. So if they need any issues, they call. Folks are present there, and that will continue during construction as well. So happy to answer any questions you may have, and again, very much appreciate your consideration and hopefully approval this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't see in the plans, is there anything in these plans for like a coffee shop or any amenities on site?
Yes, so there is at the ground floor. There's a cafe and there's a gym for tenants of the building.
Oh, nice. Okay.
My only question would be, do you know who the tenants are? Is it going to be single campus style or multi-tenant?
It's a great question. We do not have a specific tenant today. This is the idea is to really build on the success of the neighboring building. God willing, with approval tonight, we'll be able to go out to the market, attract a fantastic tenant. I can just tell you, as someone who does a lot of work in and around El Segundo, there's a tremendous amount of need. I heard you say 22%, but I'm seeing, especially people want to move into a building or into a complex like this because they can really create a campus feel. And that's, as opposed to just kind of one-off space, that's something that most tenants in the market right now are really looking for. So I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to find someone who will be a great additive to the El Segundo community.
And when you go to market, do you think it'll be more of a single tenant or multi-tenant user?
So we would love for it to be a single tenant, although it'll depend kind of when that all comes to market. My client, Colin Comai from Artisan, is here, who's kind of our leasing guru, but I know he and his team are very excited to go out to market, and I've already started to have some preliminary conversations with folks, but I think after tonight, hopefully have real concrete conversations about next steps.
there plans to revamp the existing office building?
Some, not necessarily in connection with this. I mean, there'll be enhanced parking, and frankly, the enhanced courtyard, I think is going to be a huge improvement for existing tenants, and that will be, you know, very transferable across both office buildings.
Okay. And do you know the age on that existing office building? It's okay if you
Building
don't.
was built. Do you know when that
The age of the existing office building? 80s, okay. You're going to have to, I would love to hear your comments, but if you don't speak in the microphone, the folks at home won't be able to hear you. So, thank you. We have a huge home viewing audience.
We just renovated the existing building, so we spent capital to
Oh,
improve
okay.
its image.
That's already been done. All right, thank you. All right, well, thank you, Spencer. Any
Absolutely.
other questions for the applicant? Nope. All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, did you have more questions for the applicant? No. Okay, so we're still in public communications. Anyone else in chambers wishing to make comment on this matter, you can do so now.
I'll also just add for the record, I did speak with Commissioner Newman yesterday. It was a 10-minute Zoom conversation, and it was literally the same presentation you see here this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to make public comment, now would be your time. All right, seeing no rush to the podium, we will close public communication. All further comments shall come from the dais.
It's a beautiful building, and certainly something that is needed in El Segundo. I mean, I'm not a real estate developer, kind of your business, and if you think that you're going to be able to attract the right kind of businesses for an investment like that, I mean, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I like that it's got a little cafe that's really cool because it serves the needs of the people. I was talking with somebody the other day about how way back in the day there was nothing east of Sepulveda. That's how far back I go, east of PCH. And everything was downtown. You know, you have 15,000 residents, and then you have 100,000 people that come, that work by day, come through the Main Street area here. So it was very vibrant back in the day. And then we began to develop Sepulveda, or Pacific Coast Highway, and then Main Street just went and took a dive, a nosedive. And but this is the kind of building and office offices that can be supported east of Sepulveda. They're not in the downtown community, so fortunately. But and now it's time. You know, El Segundo, the downtown area, is really becoming vibrant once again. There's plenty of it all to go around to support these kinds of projects. So I think it's a beautiful project. I don't really have any further comments on it.
Mr. Chair, I'll just make that
Please,
spiel, but
I'm on pins and needles.
it's anticlimactic at this point. But to the extent there, Commissioner Newman, if there were, it seems like there was not any additional information provided to you. But
There was not. I saw exactly this very Zoom, via Zoom. I saw that very.
Excellent. So I just want to make sure, like in these instances, that all your peers are operating with the same information. It seems like that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, I would agree, Brenda. I think it's a beautiful building. I like all of the outdoor elements, but word to the wise, there is a wind tunnel over there. If you've ever been to those corporate towers that whips through, so consider that when you're planting your trees and your greenery, that there's a high wind over there for some reason. So maybe some windmills or something, I don't know. But beautiful building, and I think it is a good example of using land to its best intended purpose, because you drive by and there's office building. This is kind of that dead zone right there off of Grand, so it's looks like a wonderful addition. And according to our chart, you'll just put us like over the top of office space in the entire South Bay. We'll become the preeminent leader of available office space.
Exactly.
So that is my only comment or question. Again, not project specific, it's beautiful, but just philosophically, if you have 20% vacancy down the road, I'd be curious what you all think will happen to some of these maybe more archaic buildings that do not look like this. And is that how we're trending? And we don't have to have that conversation here. In general, when we're building 300,000 square feet, but we have 2.4 million vacant square feet, how that plays out.
Well, I have looked at offices in El Segundo 13 years ago when I was relocating my law firm. And I looked at the building next door, and you can definitely tell the buildings that are from the 80s versus the newer buildings. So I think a project like this, you know, it's kind of the field of dreams mentality. If you build it, they will come. Like, this will go first, and then the other offices, which aren't up to date and have the amenities, they're going to go through a redesign. They're going to have to adjust to what the market wants and make their office space more attractive. But this is what this area of town is for. So I'm very happy to see it being developed. I think it's a beautiful project, and I'm sure they will probably have no problem getting it filled. Let's hope. Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Exactly.
Okay. Any comment about the monument sign? I don't have any issues with 16 feet, considering the neighborhood. All right.
8
Well, then.
feet would seem small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. All right.
We've already gone up to 20. So.
Well, then, if there are no further comments, I'll go ahead and accept a motion.
Let's see, I will move to approve this guy right here, environmental assessment, number EA 1291, including mitigation monitoring and reporting program, site plan review number SPR 20-03, offsite parking, covenant number MISC 20-01, and administrative use permit number AUP 20-03 for construction of a 93,559 square foot, 4-story office building and 4-level parking structure at 1950 and 1960 East Grand Avenue.
All right. We have a motion, and I will go ahead and second. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
3-0. Thank you. It passes. All right. That brings us to our next agenda item. We have new business. We're going to conduct, although Mr. Allen has run away, we're going to conduct a policy discussion regarding administrative use permit requests for monument signs taller than 8 feet. And who is giving our staff report? Is that you, Maria?
Yes,
Great.
we'll have Maria provide you kind of with the pitch, if you will. And then after that, you know, we are seeking some guidance and direction from on a high level policy and how to go about looking at some of these monument signs that have come to us over the past decade and a half. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Maria.
Good evening. This item is to initiate a discussion about monument signs. Specifically, signs greater than 8 feet tall that require AUP and a ADJ, adjustment application. The reason this discussion is being brought forth is because we have a pending application that involves the replacement of a 6-foot-tall monument sign. In this slide, it's to the left, for a 25-foot-tall monument sign. We are at a crossroads. We're seeing an increase of monument signs for single tenants greater than 8 feet tall and up to 20 feet tall. Specifically, signs intended for single tenants are of this height and scale, and before rendering a decision on the pending application, we're seeking feedback and direction on where and when it is appropriate to have a tall monument sign. So in this slide, I have some background. Prior to 2006, the code allowed monument signs in non-residential zones with a maximum area of 150 square feet and no height limit. In 2006, the code was amended to allow monument signs at a maximum height of 6 feet and up to 20 feet with an AUP, and signs which exceed the standards set forth require the adjustment. In 2016, the code was amended again to make it more business-friendly and permitted monument signs at a maximum height of 8 feet and up to 20 feet. So there was a slight increase because there was a demand. And rather than have people go through the application process, we streamlined it. So this map shows post-2006, the number of monument signs and locations that have been approved through the AUP process that was introduced. And we have a list between 8 feet and 10 feet, about 13, between 11 feet tall and 15 feet, about 6, between 16 feet and 20 feet, we have 10, and total 29. And you may see additional dots because sometimes we've had multiple requests. So one application could involve multiple signs that are greater than 8 feet tall. You could have an application with 15, 19, and so forth. So in this example, I want to describe the function of what signs are intended for. And this slide is describing a harmonious plan that communicates the purpose of each sign. And different types of sign have different purposes. And for example, the small wave, the smaller signs are intended for informing pedestrians. The fin and the sidewalk sign. We also have the wall signs that provide advertisement of business name and the tenant space that is located at that address, and also provide identification of the site for motorists. And the pole sign is intended to be viewed from a longer distance. It's usually taller. It has space below it. It's raised with 2 poles or a single pole. And it has multiple tenants identified on the cabinet box. And monument signs are meant to be seen at a line of sight closer distance, probably driving slower, and could also be helpful for pedestrians. So in this discussion, I want to bring to your attention of the oversaturation of signage should be discouraged in order to preserve a desired environmental aesthetic. And an excessive number of signs in commercial districts should be limited to avoid sign blindness and blight. Why do we care? Visual impacts can have negative impacts on the environment. And before we reach to the point of no return, we want to step back and get your input. With today's technology, people no longer shop driving around in a car. We buy items online and look up apps. We search for shops or restaurants in the area using our personal cell phones and make purchases from our phone. We have reached a point where we can step back and choose what is a better design. This is a comprehensive, well-designed sign package, and effective signs attract business activity and encourage harmonious design integration of signs while ensuring pedestrian safety and not adversely affecting the environment. And you can see the vehicle-oriented sign identification and directional signs, the pedestrian-oriented tenant signage, and the vehicle or oriented site identification and tenant signage. These are a few examples of what we've approved in the city. The first one was approved prior to 2006. It's 45 feet tall. The second one was through an AUP. It's 15 feet tall. We have an 8-foot tall monument sign at Top Golf. And recently we brought forth the last one, 15 feet tall. And it has multiple tenants advertised on the monument sign. The following findings must be made to recommend approval for a monument sign greater than 8 feet tall. And we're specifically concerned of making sure we have approvals that are consistent and compatible with the purpose of the zone. The following findings must be made to recommend approval for a monument sign greater than 20 feet tall. And our concern here is the legislative intent of this title. How are we making that finding? So the code reads, and I've highlighted in red the language which describes signs are allowed a sign area up to 150 square feet per sign. It does not specify whether it's one side or for both sides. Is it a combined total or not? And so there's ambiguity, and we want to have your direction. Sign A, is interpreted to be 150 square feet for the entire sign on both sides. And sign B is the 150 square feet for one side. And as you could see, the bulk and height does increase drastically. So we have to clarify these policy considerations, and we're interested in making consistency and compatibility findings. And we seek to clarify and confirm legislative intent of the ordinance. And we want to accurately interpret the code and what the community envisions for the city. And we bring this forth to you for your feedback, input, and some clarification. You have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. So can you walk me through the process if I want to build a 20-foot monument sign? What is the process the city does? Is that done at the staff level? Does it have to require a planning commission hearing?
The first thing, sometimes the set of plans comes in through plan check and we intercept it and then let them know that the correction or comment is the AUP is required for anything greater than 8 feet tall. So we give them then the application and they pay the fee, and then we prepare the item to bring it forth to the plan commission. The actual AUP approval normally in the code comes from the director. So it's a director's approval. We prepare the director approval, and then the item is scheduled. Once the director has reviewed it, we've prepared all the requirements, and it's brought forth to the plan commission to be received and filed.
So that is approval at the director level coming to us on the consent calendar, already done, receive and file, and that's it.
Yes.
Was that a change that was made? I know we did some revamping of our codes to try to make them more business friendly, where we kind of delegated, you know, like I think alcohol licenses is one of them. where we said that really doesn't need to go to planning commission anymore, that can be done at the staff level. Was there a change with signage, or has it always been this procedure where the director approves it and then it comes to us?
That procedure was introduced in 2006. The AUP process was introduced. The code only had the language for the area being 150 square feet maximum.
Okay.
And the height was primarily silent. There was no, and I was told, whatever the zoning district allowed for height, that's the size that you could build as far as height. And we have we have districts that allow 200 feet.
Yeah, and let me just clarify to Chair Baldino's point, and I think you're referring to kind of the more recent cleanup that we had. And no, that most recent cleanup did not change the AUP process for increasing the height for signage through an AUP. And to Maria's point, yeah, it's similar to what you saw before you on the previous project. An approval letter is written up. Normally, the one that we saw before you had not included the development project. The letter would have come before you as a receive and file. At that point, if there were any reservations that the commission has, they could pull the item and have further discussion on it.
Okay. So do you want to go back to that statute about the 150 feet? And then we can take a look at it and, wait. All right. Such signs are allowed as sign area up to 150 square feet per sign. And in the two examples you have here, the one on the left is 150 feet, both sides of the sign, correct?
Combined total, yes.
And the other one is 150 feet on each side of the sign.
Correct, so it ends up being double.
To me, the plain language per sign means 150 feet for the entire sign. If you do it the other interpretation, you're saying 350 feet per sign, which is not what the code says. And that's just my basic reading of what it says. I'm not giving legal advice by any means. I am just, if you want my comments on how to interpret that, 150 feet per sign means both sides of that sign. Otherwise, you're just doubling what the code says by splitting a sign in half somehow. Now, is the concern here just with monument signs, or are pole signs a concern as well, or is this something that we should just be talking about monument signs?
The definition includes other ground and freestanding and pole signs, and so
right.
The methodology and how we look at the 150 square feet would apply to the monument ground, freestanding, or pole signs in this. And I think we're less. I know we use the word interpreted to mean or looking for interpretation, but we're also looking, and primarily we're looking at what the legislative intent of the body was. It's possible that the plain language might mean differently than what the intent of the legislation was to accomplish. And this body and city council are charged at adopting legislation or recommending legislation in your case. And so we've had a past inconsistency and history of the implementation of this 150 square feet. And so we are looking for confirmation from the commission of what you believe the legislative intent from the commission at this time would be. 2006 was a long time ago. It might be a different intent at this time.
Well, let me ask the dais, does anyone else think that the intent of this is to have a giant 25 foot by 6 foot sign?
And I guess I don't want to overcomplicate it because it shouldn't be overcomplicated, but to me it's a scale issue, right? So it depends on the height of the building and of the is that something that's covered elsewhere in the code? I mean, I struggle with the 25-foot sign on a 1 or 2 story building, but obviously what we were talking about today, it makes more sense, scale. Yeah,
I think, this is, I like that staff is being proactive and saying, hey, if we keep going down this road, there may be unintended consequences. But you're right, it's hard to set a hard and fast rule unless you know the context in which that sign is going in. So these signs I've seen have all appear to be pretty much on the east side of PCH. Are the rules the same in Smoky Hollow? I can't think of a monument sign in Smoky Hollow or where you would even put one.
I believe primarily the minimum width has to be 100 feet to be able to have a monument sign.
Your land has to
So
have 100
then
feet.
that already
Okay.
eliminates the option.
All right. So we're dealing primarily east of PCH.
Right, and most of the commercial and industrial areas are east of PCH.
Right.
The larger lots.
The larger ones, right. Yeah, no, I agree. It sounds like these will need to be adjudicated and considered on a case-by-case basis because it may make sense for a larger project and it may not make sense for a smaller project depending on where that sign is. So maybe what we do is say if we want to have more local input and control, that we want to take the decision-making away from the director and say if you're going over 8 feet, you got to come before the planning commission and do a presentation. And that way, if the planning commission is all for it, then it's fine. But at least we're getting a formal presentation as opposed to something that's already been approved on the consent calendar, because that kind of has already like a weight to where that, you know, it'd be easier to raise questions and to think critically if there's a public hearing than to have someone pull an agenda item and say, wait a minute, you know, this sign is too big for this neighborhood or what have you. So if we wanted to really kind of pay more attention to it, that would be my recommendation procedurally of how we could at least have more control over it.
I mean, I don't have any concerns with the director approving that, I guess. What goes into when you look at it, what's the consideration?
Yeah, if we can go to the last slide, Maria. So, and Chair, to sort of get at your point as well, there might be some code modifications that we might look at down the road. And review process could be one of those code modifications. But some of the things that we look at or what we're looking for confirmation from the commission is what thresholds, what parameters are important to this commission. For example, if we're going to approve a monument sign that's 20 feet, does the planning commission have a preference over whether it's single tenant or multi-tenant? If your property is greater than 100 feet, linear feet, you're allowed to have a monument sign of this size and scale every 50 feet. And so do you want single tenants every 50 feet for a property that's greater than 100 feet to be allowed to have a monument sign? Or do you want to prioritize multi-tenant sites of a certain size, scale, configuration, orientation with the roadway? And so we outline a handful of things. There could be other variables that the commission might think important while we're evaluating or reviewing these sign applications.
Location's very important. We just approved the one at the point, not the point, but Plaza El Segundo. And it was way back in the back part of it so that it would stand taller. It was multi-tenant.
Yeah, the point was like buried way back there and they couldn't get people, and so we approved. I don't think they built it yet.
Yeah.
There's like a ginormous sign that you're supposed to be able to see from PCH.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that his concern is if you've got an office building, do we really want every 50 feet to have a single tenant, you know, Bob's House of Lawyers or whatever, and then another monument sign that says something else on it? Or do we want to give some direction about if there is concern about the prevalence of this, that we try to limit, you know, one monument sign per property, but then we'd have to amend the code because right now they have a property right where they're allowed to do this up to 8 feet with an AUP. So there's discretion there where we can deny it. Say a property already has a monument sign, we can say no, but maybe you take your one tenant and make it a multi-tenant sign. But I'm hesitant to start rewriting the code. I think what what we really need is just more oversight and more cognizant thought about what we're approving.
What's it gonna look like?
What's it gonna look like?
What does
Yeah,
it mean
and it's
5,
different
10
when we
years down
get,
the road?
you know, a brand new office building and here's our sign program and we get to see it all together and we see it in the neighborhood and we can visualize, okay, that works. So I think the solution is just gonna be more involvement by the planning commission so that we're taking these things seriously and we're considering them on a case-by-case basis. Not that the director is incapable of making these decisions, but I think that puts it a little more, it gives it a little more weight.
I don't know if that helps you.
It does, Chair. In the long term, we may return with code amendments. Again, that would unwind a little bit of what the revisions were in '06 and 2016, where the intention was to streamline some of this process. So we may look for some middle-of-the-road process that still allows streamlining, but allows, you know, greater discretion from the commission. But if I'm hearing the commission as it relates to the sign area size, it sounds like there is consensus that the 150 square feet is for the sign in total. That would be all sides, any side. So Maria, if we go back to the slide with the different examples of signs, that might help. That sort of direction or feedback is helpful. No, the general, the overall,
With the code section?
the cartoon-looking drawing, that might help delineate when what sign is appropriate. Because if you're limited to 150 square feet, and you're building a monument sign or a say pylon or pole sign, then if you're looking for the height and the visibility, you prioritize putting that 150 square feet. If you're doing two-sided, that's 75 square feet on each side, then you're gonna do a pole sign, or what's traditionally a pole sign or a pylon sign. If you're looking for the visibility from a distance. If you're not concerned with visibility from a distance, then you're gonna prioritize maybe the traditional monument sign of a lower level, more at a single sort of eye plane, either for drivers or pedestrians who are within close proximity. And you might prioritize putting that 75 square feet at grade or at a lower level, not as tall as the pylon sign. So that feedback in of itself of where the 150 square feet is allocated is helpful in navigating what type of sign, because there's different types of signs for different purposes. And so if somebody's looking for something else, we can advise them, well, a monument sign isn't really what you want to do. A pole sign or a pylon sign is what you want to do. And that might help us navigate the conversation moving forward, aside from the process and the discretion that the commission wants. So it was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. But yeah, so for what it's worth, I do share in the concern of the unintended consequences. So I to the extent the director is reviewing these things, it bear in mind that we are aware of what the negative consequences can be if these things kind of are just left to run amok. So thank you for bringing it to our attention and making us aware of it. Any other comments on signage?
I do not.
All right. All right, well, thank you, Maria. Thank you for the presentation. Hopefully we provided you some input that you can work with. All right, next is our report from our Community Development Director.
Nothing to report out specifically, other than the downtown specific plan is making headway, and we have a community meeting coming up. I'll let Eduardo speak on that. And as the commission brought up, we are making headway on kicking off the Smoky Hollow revision or study. I'm in the midst of onboarding the consultant team, and so we'll be looking to have a study session with the Planning Commission early on in that process so that they can get some direction of areas of priority that we want to focus on. That will not be as robust as the downtown specific plan because it's more of a cleanup, and we're going to focus and hone in on a couple areas. So we'll actually probably finish that a lot quicker than the downtown specific plan, but that'll be a good time to address some of the comments that came up about parking. Again, the in lieu fee for parking, you know, the only way we can do anything with it is when we accumulate enough money to actually do something with it. And so a good piece of information will be to find out how much we have accumulated since its implementation. And then the specific plan outlines what those improvements are. The chair mentioned some of them during the response to comments, being the striped reverse angle parking and some of the other improvements. There's a lot of other programs that the specific plan outlines that says, essentially, when you accumulate the funds, this is how it should be spent on addressing the parking issue. And there's several other programs unrelated to parking in the specific plan as well, streetscape improvements, landscaping, things of that nature.
Does it actually allocate a dollar amount that's the trigger for that?
There are estimates on cost. It does not allocate a dollar amount, and that plan is, approaching, I think, 5 years old or so. And so with inflation, all those costs go up, and so we would have to reassess those costs and determine how it should be allocated.
Are there any plans to start restriping streets as far as making things one way? Since I know we have a street maintenance program and a schedule for that.
There's a pilot program that's in the works that Public Works is working on. I think Franklin was where they were going to start. Do you remember?
Franklin's New Pine.
Oregon and Nevada.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
They are starting
So
the
the
reverse
north to
angle
south.
parking in one way on Oregon and Nevada.
Because I think the only
200 block, what?
Yeah, from Grand all the way to El Segundo Boulevard.
And the only other modification that was made was when they tried to put parking on El Segundo Boulevard, which was then undone because of safety concerns.
We're hoping this goes smoother.
Yeah, yeah. That was
A lot of questions about what those white reflector things were on El Segundo Boulevard.
yeah.
And the specific plan is just a cleanup, as you said. We're not really considering things like other uses.
Well, other uses could be considered. I think the point of the revisit is to look at it from a land use perspective and what made sense in 2016 and post-pandemic may not make sense today in terms of what uses may or may not be allowed. For example, fitness facilities was carte blanche written out of the plan, but there's an array of fitness type uses, and some might make sense today that they didn't necessarily exist in the same way that they do today. There's different models and there's different structures, there's different square footages, and so there's lots of different uses like that have changed over time that we may want to look at moving forward.
Like housing, or would that be too big of an adjustment to this?
Let's make the ask. I think we'll make the ask and we see what the consultant team can do. We have a finite amount of funds, and so if we get too outside of our over our skis there on how much we're committed to, we might have to revisit the conversation and go ask for more funding. But I think we make the ask. We have them come back to us and tell us what they can do, and then we reassess and say that's a good envelope of what we want to tackle today, or we reprioritize and we go and get a reallocation of funds to beef up the scope.
Will there be outreach to the business and landowners who are already there?
Yeah, we'll plan on doing robust outreach. It's not a big area, so it shouldn't be hard to reach everybody.
Because I want to recall that the last time we asked about why wasn't there more housing, the response was the folks who work over there didn't want housing over there. And Chevron may have something to do with it as
I'm
well.
sure
I mean,
Chevron
there's something to be said about
Yeah.
living by a
That makes
refinery.
sense, yeah. I just think of it in the context of the complaints raised today. Would somebody now rather have some housing next door than takeout restaurant? I don't know, maybe. I will say those community meetings were obviously pre-COVID, but some of the coolest that the city has hosted. Right? Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Big Door Studios.
With that, I think Eduardo, if you have any other updates, downtown specific plan maybe.
Yeah. So no, thank you. So as was alluded to earlier, we did have we were conducting community or stakeholder meetings with the assistance of our RM, the consultants assisting us with this. We also had community meetings that was done back in June. We also had, as I tried to advertise a couple times here at the end of our meetings, the survey that was also out there. So that has since closed. It closed at the end of last month. And so these meetings and the survey, obviously, as we've indicated all along, is to just better understand the community's interests and their concerns and their desires and wants for what they want to see in downtown. And so, you know, all that feedback is going to be summarized to develop some key concepts for, you know, some preliminary key concepts for downtown. And that will be presented at a second community workshop that we've tentatively scheduled or targeted for September 21st. So after we do that, we'll actually circle back with the commission, and at that point, we'll have a better, you know, more key concept type of plan to at least show you and present for your feedback. I know that was one of the concerns that I think Chair Baldino had with past you know, asks when we've brought in, you know, some of these plans to you. It's like, okay, what do you want us to do? And you know, although we try to encourage, you know, a discussion to try to get, you know, engage what the commission is looking for. I believe this time we'll come back with some key concepts that are based on those previous meetings that I've just indicated and the responses that we've received from the survey. So I think that'll be a good time that you'll have something a little more tangible to work with. And like I said, we'll present that at a community meeting first, and then we'll present it to the commission as well for more feedback. And then that will be kind of the springboard to really, you know, come in with a full-blown draft of a whole update, which that will, you know, take us into 2023.
Okay, so your plan is another community meeting, then come to us for discussion, and then come back with
The actual
a
draft.
more actual package of here's, you know, put some
Correct.
flesh on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will your community meeting be in person?
Are we doing that right now? Yes, so we are planning on that, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And then, secondly, I just wanted to remind the commission of an email that I sent, forwarded on to you about a week and a half ago, and it's just regarding commissioner trainings opportunity. So if any commissioner wants to take advantage of that, it's being sponsored by the Institute for Local Government, which they, you know, do these things, you know, all the time for commissions and councils. You know, it's probably cheaper than what our city attorney would be charging for some of their services, but I say that because it is put together by them, and it's a free workshop, and you know, it's a good refresher course for some of the veteran commissioners, and good for some of the newer commissioners as well. So if you want to take advantage of it, you go ahead and register. It's free, so you know.
What's
and
the
even
date
if it
of
wasn't,
that,
we would
Eduardo?
we would end up paying for that for you.
What's the date on that?
That is on September 12th.
Okay.
And that's all I have to report.
All right. Thank you. This brings us a report from our city attorney's office. Anything, Joaquin?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
All right. Planning Commissioner comments this evening? Nice to see everybody.
Indeed, it is good to see. Good to see and be seen.
Good to be seen.
Yep, nothing further from me.
All right. That brings us to adjournment. Our next scheduled meeting is August 25th, 2022 in council chambers at 5:30. Thank you, everyone.